Good afternoon, people who participate in our book club, and all Tolkien scholars and fans who agreed to be here with us today, receiving Mr. Hostetter, who is a NASA computer scientist. I don't know if everybody here knows that, but I've got astonished when I saw this information for the first time too. And of course, a Tolkien scholar who is a key figure in the Elvish Linguistic Fellowship. He's the author of many articles on Tolkienian linguistics and the editor of 2 journals on the subject. Vineyard Tengwar, is that right, Mr. Hostetter? The pronunciation?
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
And Tenguestie. Hostetter has also contributed to various mailing lists dedicated to Tolkien's languages, including Tolklang and Elfling. He has been also engaged by Christopher Tolkien in the ordering, editing, and publishing of J.R.R. Tolkien's writings concerning his invented languages, which have been published as Parma el Dalamberon, numbers 11 through 22 and continuing, and in Vineyard Tengwar. Finally, Hostetter also edited The Nature of Middle-earth. That's why we are receiving him here today, which includes unpublished writings by Tolkien, as well as writings originally published in Vineyard Tengwar and La Feuille de la Compagnie. That's what I call a CV. Mr. Hostetter, I'm sure I speak for everyone here when I say it's a huge pleasure to talk with you today. Would you like to say something before we start?
I'd just like to say thanks for having me. Oh, Sergio, is there something you wanted to add?
Just before Carl starts, I'd like to say happy birthday to you, Carl. I believe it's your birthday today.
Happy birthday, true.
Happy birthday.
God bless you, and I hope you live for many, many, many years, many ages
Thank you.
to come.
Purely coincidental that we're doing this today, but it worked out.
That's true. True.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to add?
I'll just thank you guys for having me today, and look forward to getting to know you guys and talking with you. So,
Nice. I'm sure it's
Be very welcome here.
Yes, welcome to Brazil.
yes.
So now I'm going to do a small presentation, talk a little bit about our book club, okay? Nothing too formal, only for you to understand our origins. So the name of our book club is Parmangolmor. The name was given actually by my friend Reinaldo José Lopes, who couldn't be here today, unfortunately. He is the translator of The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, and some other Tolkien books by HarperCollins Brazil today. And to be fair with you guys, we don't have such an incredible background story or something like it. No. However, as Tolkien readers, we have all learned to value the simple things in life as friendship, for example. Right, Christina? And this is basically our whole background. A group of friends born from a conversation on WhatsApp between Isabela Grossi, who is here with us today, and Vinicius Serrano, created with a simple goal: read and understand the nature of Middle-earth. And let me tell you something, it wasn't easy. We started on October the 4th, 2021 with just 3 people, and now we are in 10 and planning to maybe receive more readers soon. Many famous Brazilian Tolkienists have already participated in our meetings, like Guilherme Massafera, who is here today, Diego Clautal, who is here today too. Thanks for accepting our invitation, and many others, of course. Just for you to know, I guess everybody knows already, but this meeting was planned to close our first book together. So we started reading Tolkien inside Parmangolmor by The Nature of Middle-earth. That's why we decided to invite Mr. Hostetter to close this first adventure, okay? The idea, the organization of our meeting, it's going to be each one of the guests, they have the right to make one question to Mr. Hostetter, who is free to answer in the way he prefers. We sorted you out using your first names in alphabetic order, okay? And the duration of the meeting will be 90 minutes, so 1.5 hours. Okay?
Great, great.
Nice. Any other question, any other commentary, people?
I just wanted to note I've noticed how active Brazil has been in terms of translating Tolkien's books and bringing them to print. I think you guys are probably amongst the most enthusiastic translators of Tolkien's work, and it's quite impressive. So congrats to you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. And you are saying that to some of the translators that are here today. Cris Casagrande, Gui Massafera. Yes, it's really nice to hear that. Good. Okay, people, so let's start. Let's go to our questions. So starting it with the woman responsible for the creation of our group, the great Isabela Grossi, the owner of the Instagram page Hobbits Village, or Hobbit Town, maybe, and in Portuguese, Vila dos Hobbits, of course. Please, Isa, your question.
Thank you for being here today, sir. My question is, what was it like to have direct contact with Christopher and edit a Tolkien book, not only as a Tolkienist, but also as a fan? And thank you.
Well, of course, it was always a great honor to have Christopher's confidence, and I mean that in both senses. One, that he knew he could trust us to keep our mouths shut, that kind of confidence. And of course, the fact that he believed in the work we were doing and supported it. It was, of course, a great honor. It was more than that, though. It was just getting to know the man himself. He was just a remarkable intellect and wit. Just one of the great personalities I've ever met in my life. I unfortunately only met with him in person one time in 1992 at the Oxford Centenary Conference, but we did carry on a correspondence, which I treasure. So yeah, it was a wonderful thing. I kind of have to pinch myself that, do you have that expression? Had to pinch myself that it was real. Okay. Yeah, and of course I do miss him, and I will. And of course now his sister Priscilla has passed. I wasn't as close with her. I mean, I not nearly as close. I had very, very little correspondence and contact with Priscilla, but everybody feels like they knew her because she was so friendly and outgoing and a big supporter of Tolkien fandom. So she's definitely going to be missed as well. It's the end of an era. So, yeah.
Nice. And the book you edited sold already many thousands of copies. I don't have the number. How just complementing the question from Isa, how does it feel to know that, like, you are a Tolkien fan, so seeing the book that you edited selling that much, I guess it's amazing.
It's funny, I don't actually know how many copies have sold. They don't tell the authors that. We're often the last to know anything. But it has been gratifying to see that it's apparently, for sure, very popular. There's no doubt about that. Just to have contributed to what we know about Tolkien and what we know about particularly in this book, his late thoughts on various matters. I mean, I got a charge when I was reading the material for the first time as a fan, in addition to a scholar. When I first came across the passage about dancing bears in Numenor, I just had this silly grin on my face because I thought that was so cool, and not to mention a little strange. Um, so definitely the fanboy in me was really tickled at that. Yeah, so I had those moments, like, wow, I can't believe this.
Yes, we all can imagine that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Mr. Hostetter, for your answer. So, going on, now we are going to hear the question of my dear friend Cristina Casagrande from Tolkienista channel on YouTube. She's the author of Friendship in the Lord of the Rings. That's why I mentioned her when I was talking about friendship. She's the master on friendship inside the Lord of the Rings here by Luna Press. And she works for HarperCollins Brazil in some editorial projects related to Tolkien, such as translations of Mr. Bliss, Letters from Father Christmas, Smith of Wootton Major, and the new edition of the Atlas of Middle-earth that it's coming out in some months. Please, Chris.
Hi, Carl. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and with my friends and great Tolkienists too. So thank you so much, Isabela, Pedro, and all you guys from Parmangolmor. It's difficult for me for inviting me. And my question, Carl, is about authorship and editing. So just like Christopher Tolkien used to do in the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales, here in The Nature of Middle-earth, you are an editor, and the author is J.R.R. Tolkien. In your opinion, this happens because of a requirement of the publishers, because these are really different roles, or in a certain way, at least partly, an editor is an author as well. That's it.
Yeah. Well, first, let me congratulate you on your book, Friendship in Middle-earth. It looks great. I'm looking forward to having a chance to read it. One of the things I've been doing since finishing The Nature of Middle-earth, after I took a very long break, is catching up on my reading, and it's definitely in my to-be-read pile. So, again, congrats on that. Yes.
Thank you so much.
I myself am very careful that people understand I am not the author of this book. I am the editor of it, which means that I've taken Tolkien's writings and put them into publishable form, but I did not. The only thing I wrote was my own commentary on Tolkien's own writings. So in that sense, I'm an author. I'm an author of the commentary, but I am not the author of the material, Tolkien's own material, in any way. So there are a few people out there who either aren't really aware of the distinction or don't maintain it. Wherever I see it, I try to correct them. Yeah, does that answer that question, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think so. Thank you so much.
Sure. It's one thing that a lot of people have criticized is the depiction of Galadriel as this warrior elf. Well, this turns out to be something that Amazon got right. Of course, it was just a guess. They hadn't seen, the nature of Middle-earth, where it's made plain that, in fact, yes, she had a martial side to her. Whether she was actually in there leading armies and such, I don't know about that, but she certainly was. I mean, and Tolkien calls her an Amazon at one point or another, not, I think, somewhere other than Nature of Middle-earth. So they're actually right about that, and they've gotten kind of bad press on that element, and it seems to be based it seems to come from people who are basing their view of Galadriel solely on the Peter Jackson movies, and they don't really have any deep knowledge of Galadriel and her history. So, I give them credit for that. They took a guess and they were right.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Of course, please, Sergio.
Hello again. I'm sorry, but I made a video for Tolkien Talk channel about this, about the warrior and strong Galadriel. And some people came to us and said, no, you are deviating from what Tolkien wrote. Or perhaps she was a warrior, but she fought with poems and verses and music, like Fëanor fighting Sauron. She never took a sword or put on an armor. But there's no sense, because Tolkien said that she was athletic. She paired the Noldorin princes in strength, power of mind and body, and she was like an Amazon, the ancient warriors from Greece. So everything is there. He said she participated in the Alcolondia strategy. She fought there to defend her family. So there are so many passages, and people even told me that I was corrupting, something like this, corrupting unfinished tales, because those texts are abandoned. You can't use them because they aren't in the book, something like that. But we know that Tolkien never closed Galadriel's history. And I believe everything he wrote about her, if Amazon puts on the show, it's okay, because Tolkien, even though it's not the last option Tolkien chose. So I'd like just to say this, and thank you very much for saying this. I'll ask Pedro to put this cut this scene and put on Tolkien Talk, because now we can say that Clara Hostetter said that the warrior Galadriel is right. So it's a big name, a strong name in our favor, at least about this video. So thank you very much for saying this.
Sergio, my friend, people don't read it, the books, and presuming too much. That's the problem.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. There's also a letter where Tolkien talks about that, right? I'm not remembering
Yes.
now the number.
The letter, he says Galadriel was athletical and like an Amazon.
Like an Amazon. I remember reading this letter. Yes. Good. So going on now, our next guest is Eric Carvalho, professor and leader of Toca Rio de Janeiro, one of the regional centers of Tolkien's fan club here in Brazil, and a Tolkien enthusiast for over 20 years, my friend too. He studied history with a master's degree and a PhD in social memory at Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. His research focused on Celtic societies, identity, art, history, and cultural memory. And of course, he has already published many articles about Professor Tolkien. Eric, please.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Carl. It's a great pleasure to be here talking with you. It's a very interesting chat among those great friends and Tolkienists here in Brazil. Pedro, my friend, thank you for inviting me. It's a huge honor to be here. A question about something inside the book, The Nature and Middle-earth. I'm very into Tolkien references and historical references, and also memory, of course. And I'd like to ask, if, in fact, I wanted to know if you could talk a little more about how the process of passing memory, is structured, not only in the reincarnation process, but especially in reincarnation, but and how could be those philosophical bases present in Tolkien references that could help us to support and understand this question about memory better. That's my question. I hope you could understand.
Okay. Well, as you know, Tolkien wrestled with several different mechanisms by which elves could be reincarnated. Some of them very problematic for reasons in part having to do with memory. He played with an idea that the reincarnated elf would have no memory of his previous life until he hit some age, and then it would all come back. But that, you can imagine how distressing and disorienting that would be. If you're, say, 20 and all of a sudden you're getting all your memories back from a previous life. So he didn't like that idea, and I think rightfully so. I myself, I don't exactly know for sure, because I haven't made a special study of it, which one he landed on last, but which scheme I mean. But I think he probably landed on the idea of the Fea retaining the memory of its body down to the smallest detail, and then it could recreate that body for itself, and then that sidesteps the whole question of memory amongst the elves, the reincarnated elves. Much more satisfying, I feel. So I don't know, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts about it is it's like the fear is the leading point of connecting the own memory, personal memory, and the collective memory they tend to support when they reincarnated. So my question is that there's a gap. No, there's a gap between how the fear connect with some collective memory and how the fear structured this. But I agree with you. The main point is that the Freya must retain some disconnections and may pass through. And it's fantastic to imagine how all those memory and collective memory are all bounded together in a more metaphysical way. That's why I also ask how could be the Tolkien references, philosophical references to support this idea. And for me, it's very fascinating, just because I studied memory so much, but also because it's how the cultural memory among elves is well structured in Tolkien works. You know.
Mm-hmm. So I think one danger that you have if you adopt the view that the Fea retains all the memory of the living body is it could tend towards Gnosticism, where the body is just this, like a suit of clothes that you put on, and that the real person is the mind, the intellect, the memory, the Fea. Tolkien was very careful not to fall into that trap. He stresses more than once that the body as a whole, a human being as a whole, is a union of Fea and Hroa, of spirit and body, and that without both, that person is incomplete and feels it. So I still don't feel like I'm necessarily getting at your question, though.
We got it.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a question. It's an open question, and that's why I put it in. I wanted to know what you have to talk to me about it. You know, and I'm very pleased with your answer. Share it, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
You bet.
So, what do you think when Beren died and returned? He returned with or without his hands?
Oh my goodness. I don't know, I guess is the honest answer. I don't know. Because we don't really know the mechanism of his return. Did his Fea rebuild a body for him? Had his body been destroyed? Or was it just, dead, missing a hand, and then was reanimated? Don't know. I think I tend towards the latter, that he wasn't dead all that long, and so didn't really need a whole new body.
Yes.
Would they have fixed his hand for him? I'd like to think not, actually. I'd like to think that he wore it as a badge of honor. And the fact that he is given a sort of a house name of Erchamion,
Yes.
that would tend to, I think, indicate that he remained, devoid of one of his hands. So, yeah, I like that.
Yes, very good. I prefer that point of view too. Like he's now bad in one hand, right? So going on, any other commentaries, people? Sorry, I'm not opening that much. No? Okay. So our next specialist is Guilherme Massafera. He's responsible for proofreading many Tolkien books translated and published by HarperCollins Brazil, such as The Lord of the Rings and The Nature of Middle-earth. He's also the translator of the annotated Hobbit by the same publishing house. So Gui, your question, please.
Hi, Carl.
Hi.
It's an honor to be here talking to you. Thank you, Pedro, Isabela, and Vinicius for the invitation. My question concerns Tolkien studies and criticism. How important do you consider it to be for Tolkien scholars to have a comprehensive understanding of Tolkien's invented languages in order to better appreciate his fiction? And connected to it, do you perceive a clear-cut separation between literary and linguistic approaches in Tolkien studies today, in a way that perhaps literary scholars get more attention than the linguistic ones? Thank you for your time.
Let's see. Well, I mean, it's a fact that there's far more just literary scholarship than there is linguistic scholarship. There's far few people that deal with the languages, in their own right. So that's not surprising. How important, I think, well, okay. In the past, more than once, I have said something to the effect that if you really want to fully appreciate Tolkien, then you've got to know something about linguistics in general and his languages in particular. And people turn around and taken that to mean that if you're not a linguist, you've got Tolkien wrong. And that's not at all what I'm saying. And I make the point that, Tom Shippey, who is a renowned expert in Old and Middle English, has applied his knowledge of philology to Tolkien's writings and done some really great things with it. Now, do you need to be able to see the same? Do you need to have the same level of linguistic knowledge that Tom Shippey does to understand Tolkien? No. But the more you do know of it, the deeper your understanding of Tolkien will be. And to me, that seems like an uncontroversial point. You can apply that to lots of different aspects of Tolkien's life. I've taken flack for highlighting Tolkien's Catholicism and the Thomistic nature of his metaphysics as though I were saying, well, if you're not Catholic, you can't understand Tolkien. Of course, that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying, look, if you are a Catholic of Tolkien's mindset, you will see these things in it, and that may tell us something about, the broader work. But do you have to see that? Do you have to know that in order to understand Tolkien? Absolutely not. You don't have to know anything other than how to read to appreciate and understand Tolkien at a certain level. It's all a matter of what areas, how deep you want to go and into what areas. Tolkien was a polymath of an amazing, of amazing scope. He knew at least a little about a lot, and he often knew more than a little about many things. And it's, I think, fully worth exploring that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. It's incredible how many levels Tolkien has in his work, right? I agree completely too. We can go here or there, right? And in the same way, studying Tolkien. So, anything else, people, that you want to add?
Excuse me. Good
course.
afternoon, everyone. And about this, me and Sergio on Tolkien Talk, we call this is layers. You can look the first layer when you read The Hobbit. It's a funny story. It's the first layer. The second layer is some Winslow here, a very good Winslow. The third layer and layer and layer. But Tolkien make this with language, with mythology, with cartography, and it's about Tolkien. It's why we are here together. This is it.
Yes, and now, thanks to Mr. Hostetter, we know that he did that also with math. Right? Crazy. I guess it was my hardest moment. Thank you, Mr. Hostetter, for making it easier for us to understand, because math and me, we are not friends.
I almost wish, although I'm not sure I really would want to, but I make the point in person, at least sometimes, that if math isn't your thing, you don't have to read all that math. You know, I encourage people to read the text that's interleaved amongst all that math, but you don't have to read it. Now, what option did I have? I could have just left it out, right? But it does, for those who care about such things, tell us a lot about, Elvish populations, how they developed over time. And quite apart from looking at all the details of the numbers, I think there's a general story there, and it changes over time, that people would find very interesting. I think the idea that the Elvish population, that the ideas we had about Elvish populations was always kind of nebulous in the Silmarillion and associated writings. So this actually puts the details on it. And like I said, amongst the texts that are interleaved, there's quite some interesting things apart from the mathematics, like Tolkien playing with the idea that all five Eastery were present at the well, if not the awakening, then shortly thereafter. Needless to say, there's no hint of that whatsoever anywhere else. Now, you could say, well, Tolkien abandoned the idea. Well, maybe he did. Silence does not mean that he's abandoned it. It just means that we haven't seen him write anything more about it. And the most important thing is we do know that at least at that time, for a time, he had this idea. And I don't think any idea that Tolkien held at any time is unimportant or uninteresting. It's really only this when people are concerned with what they call the canon that it becomes an issue. And people have asked me about canon, and I said, for me, the canon is everything that Tolkien wrote. you know, I don't make any distinctions beyond that because I care about what Tolkien thought. And I'm not trying to make it all fit together into some coherent picture because you can't. It wasn't. So that's it. Really, it's the idea of that there should be a canon and trying to construct one just invites a lot of trouble and a lot of work that I myself am not terribly interested in. So.
Very good, Sergio. This was your question, my friend. Do you want to comment something? Because I guess he answered already.
I guess
I would just say, add this one thing. One of the great things about being an editor of Tolkien's writings is I get to decide what's interesting. So if it interests me, then I'll publish it. So I don't have to worry too much about what other people are interested in. Yeah.
I guess now it's my turn because he answered my question, Pedro.
Oh.
I was going to ask exactly about the canon. One of these days, I said in a video that some people consider canon only what Tolkien published in life. So that would be Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Road Goes Ever On, and The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. But it's so narrowing, a narrowing vision, and we would leave so many things out. And then we have all the work by Christopher Tolkien, Carl Hostetter, Verley Flieger, all these people who came after his death and are publishing all these works. So I believe that every person has a canon. For example, I think like Carl, I believe we have to look at the whole picture, but in order to seek some consistency, for example, some things I put aside. For example, the metallic dragons, the dragons made of iron from the Book of Lost Tales. I know that's something that Tolkien wrote so early, but then he never elaborated, and he created other dragons that have nothing to do with those metallic dragons. So in those times, he was under the influence of the tanks from World War I. So I believe we can say that's something that he abandoned. But it's interesting to know that he once thought about it. So there's no way to get a full consistency, but some things you can say that he abandoned or he corrected, because there are so many versions of the same stories, and we can't say this one is correct. And Christopher struggled with this, and he says in the preface to the Silmarillion that a consistency is almost impossible to get. So read this book, but know that you can't put it in a proper canon, something like this. So I thank you for your previous answer to my question, and if you have anything else to elaborate on this, I like to use some, I don't know, in English, hermeneutic rules.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps I like to use them. For example, literal. I prefer the literal readings. If Tolkien says Galadriel was an athlete and Amazon-like, so I believe that she was a warrior. She was strong. But some things, for example, there's another criteria, the chronological. For example, the dragons. Tolkien once said about metallic dragons, but then we have a later mythology that has no dragons, and that's something weird to read, to have that old reading. So this one, by the chronological aspect, you can put aside. So I try to use some hermeneutic rules to try to understand. But I know that a full canon, strictly saying, it's impossible to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. As for the metal dragons go, yeah, you make a very good case that concept fell away. I think that's probably indisputable. But isn't it cool? I thought, oh, this is so cool, metal dragons. And you're right, it was I think very much influenced by the time that he was in his life with you know, amidst tanks rolling around. And but to me, the fact that he took that and sort of transmuted it into metal dragons, I find that fascinating. And I would never just set that aside and say, oh, we can ignore this. You can ignore it if you're trying to come up with a canon, which, as you rightly point out, every canon is a personal canon. It's what you like and what you don't like, and you pick and choose and put together, you know, what you like, and that's fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But if you, in terms of a canon where it's simply, is this something Tolkien wrote? Is this something, an idea that he entertained at some point? It is canon in that sense. He did write about metal dragons, and that's so cool in my mind.
He has so many texts after the publication of The Lord of the Rings. For example, in the nomenclature, the guides to the names in The Lord of the Rings, he starts using orcs with a K, different with the orcs with C. And he says, oh, but I have used so many times that I'll leave it this way. But it's good for us to know that he was using orcs with K instead of C. But I can't say to our audience, oh, now you have to say orcs with a K because that's the last thing Tolkien wrote. No, we just say he used this here and this there, so you choose according to what he said.
Right. As far as the C goes, I could be all wrong about this. I'm trying to remember, but the orc with a C is kind of a later development, is that true? As opposed to orc with a K. I think by adopting the C, Tolkien, it was all part of his general plan in the Lord of the Rings to sort of make things look a little less alien. And ORC is, of course, it actually is the Old English form or the Old English spelling of the name of that demon that the name derives from. So I suspect that has something to do with it. He did toy with Melkor with a C for a time, but didn't settle on that, which I'm glad. I don't know why. I always just thought, it looks kind of weak. You know, put that good strong K in there. Now we're talking. Yeah. So, yeah.
I agree. I didn't like also the Melkor with a C.
And we like some R in the final too.
Oh,
put
yeah.
the K, put the R. It's very strong. Nice one, Tolkien. Nice one.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna guess I'm probably the only one here who actually read the history of Middle Earth as each book was published, as opposed to sitting down with the whole collection and starting at the beginning and working my way through. So there were lots of surprises along the way, and I think just the pace at which I read the history of Middle Earth and the things that we learned and pondered, we had much more time.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of like those people, you envy the people who read Lord of the Rings, who are reading Lord of the Rings for the first time, right? Because you know what's waiting for them. And you want them to get there as soon as possible. but then again, you also don't want to ruin the surprise. So, yeah.
Very nice. Any other commentaries, people? No?
Can I emphasize a point, Pedro?
Of course, please, Professor, please.
Thinking about the marvel and the wonder and the contemplation in its classic terms, so important to Tolkien. About this linguistics and the canon topic, about this everything that I agree with Kawa, everything that Tolkien wrote is a canon for somebody, for someone. I just want to go back to this kind of discussion about the beauty and the physical traits of people, about this contemplation, about this wonder. One thing that I'm thinking about, and I already put it in some videos, in scholastic terms, beauty as a transcendental of being, the reality, is formed both by an idea, a set of concepts, and with the scholastic philosophers called claritas, the physical traits, the set of physical, the lines, the colors, the steel of the dragons, the mechanic dragons. I mean, it is about artists. It's about art. It's about the artistic composition. It's not a philosophy. I agreed with Cowan. He said it's not a system. Tolkien idea is not a system that you can translate in concept like clearly ideas. And is a piece of art, and you have to contemplate and to think, oh, that's cool. That's the reaction that the art requires. So when, the claritas in scholastic terms can be discussed as well. I mean, and in that sense, what I want mean is that discussing the literary pertinence of a physical or phenotypic traits of people or individuals in a work of art is valid. This discussion is valid for judging the communication between an adaptation of an existing work of art, especially when this discussion about traits and physical pertinence, literary pertinence, is made in conjunction with conceptual elements. I mean, all this, the rules and the geographical features that Tolkien put in these creations, these literary to be created beings and races. So I think it's quite important to discuss about contemplation, and I think again is the contemplation is the main goal of an art, and when you twisted this main goal to put some moral, ideological lessons in a piece of art is destroying the contemplation. And I think it's important to preserve this main goal, that's the contemplation of the things. So that's it. Thank you again.
Very good, very well put. Do you want to comment something, Mr. Hostetter? Any other guests?
So
No?
what struck me when you were speaking was that the whole concept of beauty. Now, I'm not an art critic, so I'm just giving you my own perception of things. Because it seems like the idea of beauty, and certainly of any canon or norms of beauty, have been deliberately disposed of by academia and then by the society at large. They'll tell you beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and just there is no such thing as a canon of beauty. Tolkien would have rejected that notion strongly. And I can't remember where, but there's definitely words to that effect, that one of his goals, the goals of the TCBS, was to restore the appreciation for beauty in the world. Unfortunately, the world has gone quite the opposite direction from Tolkien and the TCBS. And I don't know if it's ever going to come back. I think people see glimpses of it when they read Tolkien. I think that's one of the things that appeals to them, whether well, I don't want to say understand, but whether they appreciate that or detect it, that is going on when they read Tolkien or not. To me, that's one of the great things about The Lord of the Rings. It is by no means a work of proselytization, and it's not didactic. In other words, Tolkien's not trying to teach anybody anything overtly, but he does manage to convey the feelings that go along with things like a contemplation of beauty, a recognition that you know, that how to put it, that nature itself has a certain beauty, and one that is intended by the will, call it what you will, that ultimately brought nature into existence. So, yeah, that's an interesting point of view, Diego. I'd love to see an example of where somebody takes Tolkien's early statement about sort of the mission of the TCBS as they saw it, and then look and see, well, how did things actually go in the world after that? Not too well. Yeah.
Not too well indeed. Very good, thank you. So now let's go to our next guest. She is the most beloved Portuguese person in all Tolkien Brazilian fandom, for sure. Inês Anacleto. She works at channel Tolkien Talk with Sergio Ramos and Cesar Machado, who are here with us today. And your question, please, Inês.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mr. Hostetter. It's such an honor to be here with you. And thank you, Pedro, Vini, and Isa to invite me to this meeting. So my question is connected with Guilherme's, which is about linguistics. So do you plan or would you like to edit or publish a book concerning Tolkien linguistics, since you've worked for so long about that with that subject in Vinhar Tengwar, Parma, Edalamberon? Do you have that in mind, or could that happen? Like in a way, like a work similar to Nature of Middle-earth, where you select several writings and put them together?
So the problem there is we're not done editing what Tolkien wrote. And we're just now getting into the later phases of the languages. The problem with doing something that, like you've suggested, is it's related, if you will, to the problem of canon. Somebody has to decide, well, this is the version of things we're going to go with, and so that this is how this works in Elvish. I personally don't feel we're there yet, and I personally don't have any desire to write any such book until we are at least further along, if not finished. And I'm not sure that I would do so even then, because there are actually people like Christopher Gilson, who is actually more qualified than I am to do that. He knows the languages much better than I do, and he's also an excellent writer. So I don't really feel like that's my task. I've gotten very good at reading Tolkien's handwriting, So I think for now that's my task, is to keep reading Tolkien's handwriting and transcribing things and ordering things, editing things as far as the languages go. Pretty much everything I've done outside of the languages has been a surprise to me. I had no intent of doing some of these things, but for some reason, people invite me to do it. So, so I play along. But yeah, my main task, I feel, lies with just editing and arranging and understanding Tolkien's linguistic writings.
Nice. Just another question together. You said that we didn't work with all the writings Tolkien left to us related to linguistics, right? But to the legendary, is it finished, Mr. Hostetter?
Is what finished exactly?
Like the characters, the world building, or there are more things to come? The Nature of Middle-earth was the last one?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I've been asked this a few times. The short answer is I don't know for certain, but my hunch is that by and large, yes, I'll just say this: everything that I've seen that I thought was publishable, at least in book form, and it has been published. Now, there are some other things out there, smaller pieces that in fact, I know that some are being worked on even as we speak, but there's nothing of the scope in terms of Tolkien's own writing. There's really nothing of the scope left that I'm aware of. But I'd love to be wrong. Love to be wrong about that. But I've seen a great deal of Tolkien's writings. There is, of course, there are some papers that are off limits, even to sort of the how to put it without sounding snobby. So even amongst those who have the estate's trust, there are papers that are off limits, mostly to do with family matters. And I personally have, I agree with that decision 100%, and I personally have no desire to read Tolkien's private diary. I don't need to know that. So, yeah, that's where things stand as far as I know.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry if that's a disappointing answer.
No, not at all.
That's great. I think we all wish that someone find a suitcase full of Tolkien's writings and notes, something new. But
we hope it never ends, you know. We want
That's
more,
right.
more, yeah. But okay.
Yeah. Well, it has to end someday.
True.
I just hope it ends before we get down to ridiculous levels, like, you know, the usual sort of snarky comment is, oh, now they're publishing his laundry lists, you know, which is really not true. But I sure hope it never gets to that, and I can't imagine it ever would. The Tolkien estate still is very much in charge of what does and what doesn't get published. So they at least certainly as it's now constituted, would never allow such absurdities as publishing laundry lists and things like that. So
Thank
yeah,
God.
yes.
Yes, we don't want to, I guess anybody here wants to read those personal things either. Very good.
Yeah.
So Now
I
we
would
have
just
our,
one more point on that.
of course.
I've seen a lot of people. This is especially true with the linguistics. I've seen a lot of people who are just clamoring for more. Right? We get comments like, "When are they ever going to publish?" Blah blah blah. And I say to myself, at least, well, you guys haven't even made use of the material that we've published so far. You're just in a mode, it seems, where you want more, but you haven't done anything with what you already got. So why not? Why aren't you out there and studying the early grammar of Quenya, for example, which is as complete as it's ever going to get from Tolkien? And yet there it lies, and very few people have done anything with it. Just waiting for more. Early on, this notion formed of so-called mature Elvish. That was a huge, huge misunderstanding. It's as though none of this early stuff matters. We just want the late stuff, his final writings. Well, it's not like that. At first, very often, in order to understand some of the later writings, you have to know how it relates to the earlier writings. Some of them are quite literally where he's taken an earlier grammar and gone through with a pen, different colored pen, and revised things to form a new description of essentially a new language. So you can't really just say, well, here's all the changes he made. You've got to know what the underlying writing was to start with. So I think there's quite a bit of naive thinking when it comes to this stuff. It's very easy to say, yeah, I want more, I want more, I want more. But it's also then, unfortunately, all too easy to do nothing or very little with what's already been published. So, okay,
Very well put.
off my soapbox.
Very good, very good. So our next question will be from Cesar Machado, right? He is host on Tolkien Talk, owner of Tolkien Talk, together with Sergio Ramos, Inês, that talked already, and a consultant from HarperCollins Brazil, right?
Right.
Go, my friend.
Until today. Hostetter, we talk about what is or not the canon. So related to this, I have my question. In the introduction on the third part of The Nature of Middle-earth, you made a great comment. It's simple, but just amazing comment. Your comment would help Tolkien to maintain the mythology Sun and Moon until the fall of Númenor. And when I was reading, I thought, it's so genius, simple and genius. How did you think about this? We can have the Maiar until this, and it will comes, change everything. It's okay. Talk about a little this, please.
Sure. First, unfortunately, I have to point out that I've taken some flack for including that. People thought it was too obtrusive for an editor to do that. I can see their point, but the fact of the matter is, this is an idea I've had for a long time. I never really found a suitable place to publish it, and since I'm the editor and I get to decide what goes into the book, I took advantage of that opportunity to float this idea. So, you know, that's now. In terms of the idea itself, I actually, the germ of it came from a series of books by an author called John Crowley, who's got has a series of books called Egypt. And the central conceit of that series of books is that, so for example, magic at one time in Europe actually worked. And but that periodically in history, there are these changes of the world such that things only appear to have worked. You know, it doesn't any longer work, but it appears that it did when people look at the history. So this whole notion of the idea that a world change could actually change history just seems so neat when applied to this issue of the round world. God could obviously make it appear that the world had always been round, and that that's what the world was really like, and Venus had always been a planet. The moon had always just been a celestial lord. But before this change of the world, that was not the case. The simple expediency of such an idea is it would have saved Tolkien a lot of grief, and it would have still have preserved the beautiful distinctives of his mythology, such as the two trees. When you look at the machinations he had to go through to try to come up with this pseudo dome of the heavens under which the two trees, gave off their light, it seems so artificial, and it doesn't really. It doesn't have beauty, the same level of beauty as the original myths. So why maybe Tolkien did think of this idea, but had some objection to it? I don't know. I'm not aware of any writings that entertain this idea. But again, it seemed like something that I just wanted to put out there. So.
And I appreciate it. You put on the book. Don't hear all the comments about you made some intrusion. It's a good comment, make total sense, and we as a readers know it's your opinion about this section. It's a good one. I really agree with this because it's a win-win situation. We preserve the past, the mythology and the beauty about the Diego Clautal, our friend, the beauty of the myth of the sun with Arian, Tilion with the moon, and when the higher man from Númenor starts to fall, okay, I'm gonna reset the idea. Everything's changed. It's okay. It's a good one. And so I will be a little audacious. Can I make one more question, Pedro?
We have 10 minutes. So
right. Let's go. It's a little one. Do you really look the emphasis and really? Do you really believe that Tolkien would complete the Silmarillion someday?
No.
Me neither.
Short answer, no.
No. No.
I think he'd gotten to the point where he no longer had the how to put it. I hate to say he didn't have the desire to do so, but he sure let himself get distracted by lots of other things.
Carl, Christopher Wiseman wrote a letter about this. So Wiseman talk with Tolkien. I believe you're never gonna finish because you need the elves, right?
Yeah. Yes. It was his nature to niggle. He was always making changes, playing with new ideas. It's kind of amazing he finished Lord of the Rings, actually. But in terms of the Silmarillion, I honestly don't. Well, okay. If he had been given immortality and didn't have any of the vicissitudes of age and care and disease, maybe, I don't know. But what I will say is this. I've said this before. I'm actually very glad that he never finished the Silmarillion. Because if he had, we would not have the history of Middle Earth. We would not have this amazing record of the development of his mythology and of all the ideas that he entertained, which to me is just fascinating. And I would regret not having it. And I think, there's lots of really fine writing that he did complete along the way that we can all enjoy. I can certainly understand why people think, oh, what if only? But given that it's hard to imagine that particularly within the life that he was actually living, I don't see that he would have ever found the energy or the focus to do it.
And in the end, we discussed a lot about that inside Cristina's Casagrande study group in USP, right? That it's amazing. Yes, she's wearing the t-shirt. Good. That Tolkien kind of artificially created a mythology. So we have many different versions for the myths that he created, like we have this inside Northern mythology, Greek mythology. So it makes even more amazing, I guess, when we don't have a final canon or a final Silmarillion, because we can enter in those layers and understand different points of view in different moments of life. I love it.
And it's not important at all, because the importance is the essence of the background story. So you have different mythologies. That's the point. That's the richness of Tolkien legendarian. So
right.
We need to think about Leaf by Nigel. We can't see Silmarillion as a book. It was a work of a lifetime, and it was always growing. And if you keep a tree from growing, it will die. So it's impossible to have a final Silmarillion, a final Beren and Luthien, whatever story inside the Legendarium. So as as Eric said and Pedro, we're happy that he didn't finish his mythology.
Yep.
Nice. Very good, people. Any more commentaries before we close?
So I noticed, since we are coming up on the end, is there anybody who has a question that they were just dying to ask and we ran out of time?
I have a question.
Yes, I knew I would say Chris has a question.
No, because I thought Rafael would make a question. That's why I didn't ask anything. Aren't you going to ask something, Rafa?
No, yeah.
No, but I think that I know what the question that you ask.
Who is Tom Bombadil? No, I'm kidding.
No, about the volume years.
Yes.
About the volume year. That it?
No, you can make your question, please. Make your question.
Oh, I think my question is silly.
That's okay.
That's okay. Before the nature of Middle Earth, we knew that volume year corresponded to 58 years, sun years. I'd like to ask you about the volume year present in the chapters 1 and 2 of the nature of Middle Earth. That we have the information that one volume year corresponds to 1,044 moral years. Are these Tolkien writings more recent than the writings in the history of Middle Earth?
144, right?
144.
Right, 144. They were all written around the same time. It's not like there was a huge gap between them. But the 144-year version starts out supposing the 10-year version. So based on that, it seems like it's later than the 10-year version.
Good.
So,
good.
and that was not silly, because I always like to say,
I computer science as well as you. So
Yes.
so
yes.
that's why he likes mathematics.
I'm developing.
as I like to
I'm
say,
developer.
there's no stupid questions, only stupid answers. So,
Thank you.
Amazing. Good. We have
Yeah.
only 2 minutes. I don't know, Mr. Hostetter, do you want to hear one more question?
sure, I can do one more.
Okay,
So
so go, Chris.
I'd like to, sorry, Sergio, can I? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Because I was thinking about 2 trees of knowledges in Tolkien's writings. One is theology and the other philology. I know it's not essential to read Tolkien to know theology or philology, linguistics, but which one do you think is more relevant to understand better Tolkien's writings, theology or philology? I don't want to have a fight between the 2 knowledges. No, it's not that. But which one would you choose to be the more relevant one? That is my question.
So I would say that philology, wow, that's a really good question. I think the philosophical element in Tolkien's writing becomes more pronounced and more important in later years. Whereas before that, philology obviously played a big role. But of course, you can't really separate. Every bit of world building assumes some kind of metaphysics, whether the author understands that or not, because that's you're describing a world, and to some degree, you're going to be explaining how it works, and that assumes some sort of a metaphysics, something sort of above the literal words on the page and the literal actions on the page. There are other things that inform a story, like motivations, goals, and all of those, again, whether an author knows it or not, are ultimately metaphysical in nature. I just think it was more overt in Tolkien's later writings than in his earlier writings. Does that answer your question?
Maybe they are two trees with the same root, linguistics and
Yeah,
philosophy.
yeah, definitely.
Philosophy.
Yeah, that's right. They're not entirely separable. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got
Amazing, guys. What an afternoon, right? So, yeah, this was our last meeting of Parmangolmor, Studying the Nature of Middle-earth, our first book, edited by our kind guest, Carl Hostetter. Thank you again, Mr. Hostetter, for your time here. I'm here also representing Toca Rio Preto, our core here in my city. We have here 3 different channels on YouTube, 4 different fan club cores, our book club. Amazing. Thank you all for that.
Don't forget that I represent 2 channels. O Guardião Católico. Carl, I have a second channel called The Catholic Garden. So I use the nature a lot, about the saints and Catholic symbology. I talk about it a lot in the other channel.
What's it called again?
It's in Portuguese, O Guardião Católico, The Catholic Garden. It's
okay.
specific about Tolkien and Catholic Church.